have not recorded in a little bit. It's the 13th because I am trying so hard to deal with life. I have multiple spider bites, and one of them's on my freaking face. Um, for whatever reason, there was a spider that really, really thought I tasted delicious and kept biting me, and they're bad. I have been waiting for the bite to go down, and this is as much as it's gone down. But at least now it looks sort of like an agitated sit instead of a massive spider bite, so whatever. Um, yeah. Um, I also had to long distance drive, and we had to go back and get my girlfriend her medication and stuff like that. So I haven't uploaded every single day because of that either. I've been very worn out. But despite being so worn out, I did do a little tiny smidge of exercise yesterday, and I actually got all my protein in, which was very difficult to do. Um, I'm gonna have to, I think, start drinking like protein shakes a couple of times a day, um, or just even protein in milk because I'm just not getting protein. Um, I've been researching it a lot, and supposedly someone who is very overweight and doesn't have a strong history with doing strength training could do body reconditioning, but I'm not really seeing that. As far as I can tell, I'm just gaining muscle. I haven't seen any like fat reduction as far as I can tell. So basically, I'm just doing muscles first instead of fat loss first, which is what you got to do with exercise. You usually have to pick one or the other. But I read a bunch of stuff that said that there were certain body types that could do both at the same time for a little bit, and it's just not happening. So I'm like, whatever. I'm just gonna full blown go for the muscle. Um, sup- Supposedly, if you're really overweight and you don't have it, and you have a history of like being sedentary and not doing a ton of exercise, you can recondition. But whatever. Anyway, being strong is more important to me anyway. So I'm glad that I'm doing muscle first. If I was gonna do something, that's what I would want. Um, I don't think I could handle feeling weaker. I just could not handle that. So I technically have lost 2 pounds at some point during the last 2 weeks, but 2 pounds ain't really that big of a deal. Um, if I lost 2 pounds every week, that would be more of a big deal, but that basically means a pound a week, which is not body recomposition or whatever. So, um, the world is very frustrating. Today is the anniversary of the Pulse massacre, where a bunch of people just got murdered for existing. And today is the day that the president announced that he's revoking health protections for those very same people. Because of course he is. And of course he wants to announce it on the anniversary. Because of course he does. I don't know. It seems like a day can't go by without something terrible that he's doing yet again. It's amazing how much one person can make so many people suffer. But then at the same time, that's been true throughout all of history. People are lying about Seattle, which frustrates me because I used to live in Washington State and I used to live not that far from Seattle. And everyone I know who is there, um, you know, they post pictures and everything showing that it's not violent, it's not bad. Basically, a bunch of store owners and protesters started a co-op of these street blocks are police free and we're just happy to exist together. And all the people just hang out and buy flowers and walk their dogs and watch Martin Luther King documentaries while sitting around together. Like, it's completely peaceful. And the news would label it as a big violent protest thing. And that they're trying to, like, steal part of the country or something. I don't know why they have to be like that. It's supposed to be Pride Month, but people are using the fact that we're not celebrating because of the pandemic, we're not doing parades and shit, and, we're trying to give the Black Lives Matter movement the much needed support it needs and trying to hold up it, and people are using that as an opportunity to do awful things. It's not the first time that J.K. Rowling said something anti trans, but at the same time, she made a big statement about why she feels that way and like her personal experiences that helped shape her views and stuff. And I don't know, I have a little more of a, instead of calling her names, just educator stance. If she openly says, this is what she believes and why, and it's not based on the facts, it's based on this, this, and this, and she admits that, then help her understand the facts. Like, I don't know. I think I think she's very misinformed, and I think that she probably has friends who are very anti-trans, and she just spews whatever they say or something. I don't think that she's actually educating herself. And some people can say, oh, well, she's rich enough, she could educate herself, but sometimes you don't know where to start. As someone who had to, like, claw their way out of an extremely twisted and backwards thinking, like, raising, like, the mindsets and the belief systems that I was raised with are outright evil. Like, they're terrible, completely wrong and awful. You need someone to be able to recognize. You just don't know. And to be patient enough to help you know sometimes. And everyone is just calling her names and hating on her. All they're doing is making her more sure that the terrible things that she's been told by someone else must be true. You're just reinforcing it. If you're not going to say something constructive, why are you saying something? Constructive would be, here's the reasons why what you said are misinformed. Why isn't her feed filled with that? A couple of people say that, but the majority don't. And I don't understand that because The trans community is really small in the first place. It's not like we're a massive community. So why is such a tiny, tiny portion of the trans community so, like, loud? When the majority of the trans community, as far as I can tell, are very not that way. I don't know. People make really dumb arguments to stuff. I'm like, there's countries out there that do things well and have over time proven the system is effective, so let's implement that system. Like, it makes sense. And people are like, oh, well, stupidest things for arguments. Like, oh, one of them is the population is smaller. And I'm like, okay, but if you combine all the countries that have that system together, or say Europe as a whole together, like, you have the same population. Or a really good one is Norway has in the last 10 years had to kill 0 people as police officers. Not a single person. Our police kill 1,000 people a year in the United States. And people are like, oh, well, Norway's different. It's got so many less people. And it's like, 0 times anything is still 0. It's obvious that our system is crap and their system is not. That's over 10 years. You don't you don't judge one of our years by 10 of theirs. It's a stupid argument. But I don't like to argue. I feel like people like to argue. And they're like aggressively holding on to a stance for no logical reason. Like, you can give them all the information in the world and they refuse to listen. And maybe J.K. Rowling is like that too. I don't know. I don't know J.K. Rowling, obviously. But maybe not. I always give people, the opportunity at first. And then if they're still like that, I'm like, okay, bye. And if they ever ask why I'm distancing myself from them, I'm honest. But almost none of them do. Because they don't actually care. They're too busy listening to their own voice to even notice you were gone. I'm worried that by the time I start looking at surgeries and stuff, surgeries aren't even going to be protected anymore or anything. I mean, it's still legal to murder trans people in 40 out of 50 states in the United States of America. That you can use their transness as an excuse to kill them. Thankfully, every time anyone's ever tried to do that, there were other circumstances involved in the murder that made them still get convicted. And it's never actually worked for someone, but Why is it even a law? That's allowable. It doesn't make any sense. I look at other countries and I don't understand this one. But I'm poor and my spouse has special needs and my girlfriend's in college. Well, one more year, but till she graduates with her degree. But still, what country wants us? We're not bad people. I would even say we're good people. But we don't have any capital to offer. I wish people were valuable. I wish that people's value wasn't just determined by how much they could produce in a factory or in some sort of job, but that people mattered outside of that in like systems and computers and everything, because people do matter. My therapist is trying to convince me that I matter just as much as the people that I love, and that anything I do for them, I should also be doing for myself. And I'm like, on the one hand, I believe everyone matters exactly the same. I genuinely believe that. And I believe everyone except like 1% of the human population deserves better than what they get. We have the capability to do better. But we don't. And I don't believe I am worth less or deserve less than the next person. And I don't believe that they deserve less than me. I believe we all deserve to be happy and healthy and safe and to not have to live in fear. When I love people, I take care of them. I'm a living shield. That's what I am. I do. I can take care of them. And I'm not supposed to do something nice for the girls without also doing something nice for me. But that's not very realistic. I am trying to do it a little bit, but it is just not applicable to all situations. I'm a very consistent person to the utmost of my ability, and that's the thing is I can recognize consistency and when it's possible and not. And it is not possible to say, "Oh, I'm going to devote an hour every day to playing this game and then an hour every day to playing this game and then an hour every day to doing exercising and then an hour every day to spending time with the girls and an hour every day with spending time with myself." And like, that's not, life is not consistent like that. That's trying to force That's trying to be very human. Humans always are trying to force, you know, control when the universe is very, very unstable. The universe just is constantly tending toward chaos, and that's what makes it beautiful, and that's what makes it grow. That's what makes it perpetuate. And we don't go with the flow of that. We just demand our own way. But our own way just isn't functional. Different things happen on different days. Some days, my spouse is pretty normal seeming, and then some days, she is having complete and total issues, and her health is so bad. She requires constant care to the point that you're exhausted before the day's even half done. And some days, we're all just hanging out and having fun, and some days the girls are fighting with each other constantly. Some days it's, hey, stuff is going smoothly, and some days everything's breaking, everything's falling apart, nothing's working right. And you don't get to control that, you don't get to decide that. And you do your best. I was trying to think about when I probably would start testosterone and when I might get, start doing surgeries and stuff. And this is again magically if I can afford it. And I was like, honestly, none of that might even be available if someone else doesn't get voted in as president. And honestly, even then, the current one will be there until freaking January anyway. And do as much damage as possible, throwing a tantrum. It's like not realistic, even besides all the other reasons it's not realistic, to expect that all of that will even be possible. It takes recovery time from surgeries. Even if I had a surgery tomorrow, I would not be able to get all the surgeries done before it all possibly goes away. Even trying to live in states that have more protections and more acceptance, even then, there's a bunch of things that could still go away just because it's not functional. Like, I look at all these people in these trans support discords crying about their different types of appointments that have been postponed due to the pandemic. Even if I wanted to, like, start testosterone tomorrow, I would not be able to because of the pandemic. Like, by the time there's availability and stuff, what's available could be completely different. One of my spouse's medications got completely canceled because of the pandemic, and they just couldn't support making it because they had to get some of what was needed for it from other countries that were also affected by the pandemic, so they just canceled it completely. Some stuff's in short supply, and I mean, that's to be expected. It's a pandemic. But it's not just in short supply because of that, it's also stuff's changing. And a person can say, oh, I wish I would have known that I could do this sooner. Oh, I wish I would have done it sooner. Oh, whatever. But you can't change the past. You do the best you can with the information you have at the time. And then that becomes the past. I don't trust that just because I know I'm a guy doesn't mean that I can trust that I will ever actually get to fully be one. In fact, it feels very unlikely. I don't wish I don't know. I don't wish I could go back to not knowing. But at the same time, it is frustrating. You finally start to figure yourself out and start to think about yourself and what's been wrong your whole life. I mean, even if I started transitioning this year, I'll be 40 before I'm actually a man. Even if things did go well, and even if money did come out of the sky. Even if somehow I could find some way for my spouse to still be taken care of while I was in recovery between surgeries, even if somehow protection doesn't get taken completely away, even if somehow stuff gets better instead of worse. It is what it is. I got told not to say that anymore, but it really is what it is. I'm trying. That in my experience, very little is in a person's control, no matter how much they try to control things, no matter how much they try to plan for things, no matter how much they try to work hard and take care of everything and prepare for the worst and keep things functional. I'm very good at maintaining and keeping things functional. Very good at it. And as someone who is good at it, life is not a controllable thing. And every time I start to feel even slightly good about myself, it within a couple of minutes something happens to drag it all back away again. I'm very resilient in that I can survive a lot of shit. I'm very resilient in that no matter how bad I feel, I get things done. But I am not even slightly resilient when it comes to staying hopeful about anything, or excited, or delighted about anything. I have none. I can fake happy to make people more comfortable, but that's it. In my life's experience, there's never really been a lot of reason to hope for much of anything. I meet people who do, and I don't know how they do it. Maybe you just have to be raised with it, I don't know. Because I certainly was not raised with hope. The only hope that I was ever told there was Jesus. And nothing else. So, hope is basically some invisible dude who has no effect on your life at all and doesn't save you from any of the horrifying things that happen to you constantly. And that's the closest thing to hope there is. I didn't even hope that I would get out. I didn't even know I was getting out when I got out. I thought I was just doing the right thing, even though it was hard, because that's what I do, is try to do the right thing even when it's hard. I try. Because I have like a compulsion. Not because I'm noble. I don't I don't have a lot of hope. To me, as far as I can tell, realistically, in order for me to actually transition, it would take a miracle. And I don't believe in miracles, really. Everything's just luck. And I've never had good RNG. All of everything in life is luck. And some people are more lucky than others. Where you're born, who your parents are, totally luck. You don't get any say. If there's going to be a natural disaster or not, you don't get a say. Where you're going to end up at school, is anyone going to be your friend? Or are they all just going to be bullies? Are you going to end up abused or not abused? someone gonna be cruel, deeply cruel, more than one someone? It's all luck. You don't get to decide any of that. Or are you gonna magically end up one of the lucky ones who are born to, you know, one of the 1%ers and everything's handed to you? You never have to experience survival or starvation or not having great stuff and having to make it last anyway. You never have to experience any of that kind of hardship. But I don't know, I imagine they experience a different kind of hardship. I don't think their life is perfect. Easier in some ways and harder in others. I think rich people must be the kind of people who live in fear all the time. Like multi-billionaires and shit. I don't mean just like like an average millionaire. I mean like multi-billionaires. They must be scared all the time. And that's why they hoard all their wealth. Like, they must have some of the most severe anxiety disorders and insecurities. I don't know. That's just my view. I think by the time we die, we all have experienced some bad luck in some way or another. It's just some people get more and some people get less. That's not a controllable thing. The hardest working people I've ever met in my life were all poor. And I've met multimillionaires. I've not met a multi-billionaire, but I've met multimillionaires. Lazy people. The hardworking ones are the poor ones. It's a lie that you can work hard and get somewhere. I have never met anyone in my entire life who worked hard and got somewhere except one single couple. They lived off of almost nothing their whole lives, and their paychecks went to almost nothing. And they were able to buy some gas stations with that and get to a point where they had millions, but they had lived so long in so much fear that they just hoarded it because they were too scared to do anything to lose it. They worked hard their whole life and they were now old and considered a multimillionaire. And they were gonna, have maybe 20 years to live with that status and do nothing with the money. And they're supposed to be the lucky ones. I don't think a person needs to be rich at all to be happy. But I do think a person's basic needs need to be provided for in order for them to be happy. And a lot of countries do that really well for their citizens. But I was not lucky enough to be born in those countries. And I am not lucky enough to be eligible to immigrate to those countries. And I'm not even lucky enough to be with people who want to go to those countries. The girls would rather stay where they can see their family. I don't know. I'd give up ever seeing my family again to live somewhere that wasn't like this. Where you have to think about, oh, I shouldn't drive this weekend because the police will probably be protesting them people asking for them to have accountability. Oh, I shouldn't go to that store because people don't take a pandemic seriously. I mean, I don't want to have a child. Have them get raised with shooter drills and people teaching them terrible things all the time. I'd never encountered racism in my entire life until I lived in Tennessee as a child. Like, just open, blatant racism. And the other little kids all tried to teach it to me, and I felt so awful. I will never ever forget the awfulness. Not ever. I didn't even know people could be that way to other people. When I was little. Until then. Of course, once I discovered it was a thing, I realized that a lot of the people I'm related to are very racist. Extremely racist. It's just they're never around the people they're racist against. So I never saw it because they were never around. When you live in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, there's not a lot of Latinos or, you know, even black people actually, because it's so cold and it's so far away from where they, would normally live. So you don't see your family members be racist, but I don't know. It kind of started during the Bush administration. Up until then, I hadn't really seen it. And then during the Bush administration, racism in my relatives and stuff started matching the racism in other people that I saw. Like when I was really little, I don't remember them ever even talking about like anything like that. I'm trying to think. It was literally during the Bush administration. I can't remember a single time before that they were actually racist. They were conservative before that, but they weren't racist. At least never around me. It's sad. No matter what, it's sad. Anyway. My family is not the point. People I'm related to. The world isn't even the point. I just don't really agree with my therapist that I think I don't matter. I think everything matters and everyone matters, and it just doesn't get treated right. I think I just have no hope that stuff will start to get treated right. We don't have to live this hard of a life. It doesn't have to be this bad. And yet it is, for no good reason. And there are other people in the world who live so much less bad of lives. And I think we should all live that way. And all get to have less hardship. And all get to have less pain. But I don't actually have any hope that that will happen. I don't have any hope. That's the point. I just don't have any hope. I'm trying to think of something I am hopeful about. I can't even think of some little stupid game thing. I hope I get enough protein today. Yeah. I just... I don't have any hope at all.